What's up, everyone? In this episode of Motive Garage presented by Sparesbox, our Yaris is back. Bigger, badder, and better than ever. If you watched the last episode on our GR Yaris, you know that we pulled the engine out, took the head off to inspect why it had started pressurizing the cooling system and essentially blown a head gasket. Now, we didn't find any damage. The head studs weren't stretched. There was no visible damage to the head gasket other than where you could see where some cylinder pressure had pushed its way through, pressurized the cooling system, and then obviously when the car cooled down, that water seeped back into the cylinder. Craig from Castle Hill Toyota went and got the head decked. We checked the head studs and they were fine, but we ordered brand new head studs anyway. There's no head gasket option available right now, so we bought a brand new factory head gasket, which luckily is a multi-layer steel head gasket, and basically decided to put it all back together. Now, you're probably wondering, why didn't we try and come up with some aftermarket solutions for head studs and head gaskets and port the head and build the engine and all that sort of stuff? And to be honest, the real reason for that is two reasons. One, our Yaris was never meant to go this far. It was only ever meant to be, max 280 kilowatts, a circuit car, and just show you guys the basic upgrades and bolt-ons for a Yaris to help you go fast. It just spiraled out of control. My 200 and my GTR, happy for them to spiral forever, but the Yaris was never meant to go that far. And secondly, well, you guys have the chance to win it thanks to LMCT Plus. The whole idea is once we've finished our development, LMCT are buying the car off us and then raffling it, which you guys could win. And obviously go to the link below in the description so you can become an LMCT Plus member and go into the chance to win it. And once we've finished, you'll be able to buy individual tickets to win the Yaris as well. So that's basically the reason why we decided to not spiral the build out of control and just put it back together. Like I said, brand new head gasket, brand new head studs. We skimmed the head to make sure it was flat and it all went back together. So let's go over to Castle Hill Toyota and see what Craig got up to. Time for a montage.
Something I need to erase. This your guilt that I know I must face. When I picture your voice, I can hear from the side, not alive. Leak your eyes, but now I can sleep. This your guilt I know I must face. When I touch through your skin, I can feel I'm dead inside. I'm alive. This is the end of it all. Why can't they see? What's wrong with me? I reach to you. What's wrong with me?
So while putting the engine back together, we decided to do a couple of upgrades at the same time. One of them is a set of Kelford drop-in camshafts for the GR Yaris. Now, these have been tested on a couple of cars that have standard turbos and done pretty well. So we're quite excited to try them in the car. Hopefully they can help us make at least the same power, but on less boost pressure and make it easier. So we installed those while we're putting the engine back together. And the other thing, oh man, it's too cool. I've got to show you another montage so you can see just how cool this is. Let's go. Anyone that knows anything about transmissions knows exactly what they're looking at. That is a PPG 6-speed straight cut dog engagement gear set with billet selector forks and new main shafts for a GR Yaris. Now, you probably noticed there's 3 shafts in a GR Yaris, which is different to your typical rear-wheel drive gearbox that has input and output shaft. There's 3 shafts, they're all billet, all new gears on it, including reverse gear and all dog engagement. So when you're limited by space in a gearbox like that, a lot of guys go for straight cut. The downside obviously is they can be quite noisy. We'll find out very soon if it is in our car. And obviously dog engagement is getting rid of synchro, so we can have nice, fast shifts and even clutchless shifts as well. Now it also comes with billet selector forks, because when you're rowing gears on a dog box, there's more, I guess, more strain or more force on the shift. And you don't want to bend a factory selector fork, so it comes with new selector forks as well. The gears all come assembled on each shaft, which makes assembly a lot easier. And luckily, Craig from Car Seal Toyota also works on a lot of race cars outside of work. So he was working on our car outside of work and was even able to put the gear set into our GR Yaris as well. Combine that with obviously our NPC clutch, our Cusco front LSD, our factory Toyota rear LSD that we got from the rally, and we have a pretty serious drivetrain in our GR Yaris right now. So the next step with the car running is obviously with those big camshafts in it, we need to get it retuned. The big question is, how much more power can we make? Let's find out.
So it's good to see the car back here. We've had a look at these camshafts in the past. We've run them on a stock turbo car in the past. So we have a pretty good understanding of what the camshafts may do in this setup, but we haven't run them on a big turbo before. So it's pretty exciting to be able to stick the camshafts in this with the larger turbo and effectively find out where we can get to on the same sort of boost levels and sort of still maintaining our torque limit that we talked about in some of the earlier episodes. So the first thing that we need to do after putting the camshafts in the car is set up the camshaft timing. So previously with things like RBs and you know, older engines like that, typically most people have a locked cam gear on the front of the camshaft that may be able to be moved forward and backwards, but typically it's locked in its position after it's all set up on the dyno, and that's it. So what that means is that we can actually advance the camshaft, you know, 50 degrees advance or maybe 20, 30 degrees retarded. And we can do that with both of the camshafts, and we can do that dynamically throughout the dyno run or the, you know, different RPM and load points for the car. But there is a lot of time in basically optimizing that camshaft timing throughout the different load points and engine RPM points during a run that effectively optimize the amount of torque that you can make at a given point and also manage the cylinder pressure at a given point. So with the factory camshafts, what we were actually seeing is the engine efficiency falling over at high RPM and load points. So if we were to look at the fuel map inside the ECU, you'll actually see as the RPM increases, we're actually commanding less and less fuel because the engine is less efficient. Now, with the bigger camshafts, the engine is going to be more efficient in that point, which means that we can add more fuel and obviously make more power. So one of the things with engine efficiency is that efficiency is the engine's ability to basically pass or pump air through the engine. Now, what happens is we can overcome that efficiency by adding more boost. Now, what that does is moves us into a different efficiency range within the turbocharger. So what this can typically do is, for an example, we might make 300 kilowatts on 30 pounds of boost with a not really efficient engine. We might have a very efficient engine that makes 300 kilowatts with the same turbo, but that may actually be on 15 or 20 pounds boost. That's because of the engine's ability to pump that air in and get that air out. So because the turbo in this particular car, we've sort of gone to the extremes and we've pushed the turbo on this car to around sort of 38 to 40 pounds on the previous setup. I'm not really expecting huge amount of gain, but what I am expecting is a little bit more power at less boost. So a really brief, I guess, tuning process that we went through with the car. Put the camshafts into the car arrived and basically it was running like crap. So the reason that it was running like crap is that the camshaft tables that we had in there for the advance and retard of the inlet and exhaust camshafts, that was suited to the factory camshafts. And what we actually found with those is that we could advance and retard them quite early in the rev range and load range, and it would actually allow us to create more torque. Now with those existing tables, when we put the new camshafts in, the car didn't really want to run it at all. If, you know, it ran at sort of like 700 RPM, was popping and farting, and it just wasn't happy. So the first step is to zero those tables, set the boost level to wastegate pressure, so remove all the stresses, you know, that you could add to the engine. Remove a small amount of timing overall, and then run the car up on wastegate pressure to get a baseline run. From that point, you can then actually start to fix up the fueling and the differences that you can see in the base efficiency table. and then start to actually introduce some camshaft to that. So we start with the inlet camshaft, slowly advancing that to find the happy point, because you can actually exceed the happy point of the car. You can go, say, 50 degrees advance, and it doesn't really make any extra power. You don't need to be there, we can pull that back down. After we've done that with the inlet camshaft, we effectively do the same with the exhaust camshaft. We overlap them and we find the most power that we can throughout the entire rev range with the camshafts in their correct positions. After we've done that, then we can start to add more ignition timing back into the car. And throughout this whole process, we're always checking the fueling and updating, because by moving those camshafts, we change the engine's efficiency, which in turn changes the amount of fuel that's required for the engine to run at the same lambda. After we've done that, we then basically start to increase our timing, increase our boost, and go back to that timing and boost and slight adjustments to the camshafts. So we were able to find that at wastegate pressure, we made about 30 kilowatts difference. So just with the camshaft, the same boost pressure, so we're looking at about 16, 17 pounds, the car made about 230 kilowatts. So one of the things I mentioned is that we've actually used these camshafts before, but with a stock turbo car. Now, what we were able to find is that on the stock turbo car, it made about 30 kilowatts difference as well. So straight away, we're able to see that at wastegate pressure, making 30 kilowatt gain, that's on par with what we'd seen in the past, so we were on the right track. One of the things that we found is that basically we've made more power on wastegate pressure, and it was now time to start putting some boost and timing into the car and see what power we can actually make. So pretty much we start on wastegate, about 17 pounds, 16 pounds. We then move to 20, 22, 24, 28, 30, 32, and we sort of, all this time we're managing the torque. So we've got our torque limit from our previous, that you would have seen in our previous videos. That torque limit we've come up with is about 500 Newton meters. So for all those playing at home using a mainline hub dyno, there's the magic number, there's some inside information. 500 Newton meters is pretty much what we've found is the limit that over time you will likely push water. It will take some time, but that's your magic number. So what we were able to do is, sticking to that limit, is we were able to increase our boost, increase our timing. Later on, where the torque was previously falling off, and we ended up with over 380 kilowatts, which it's pretty impressive. Now, the more impressive part is that this was now only on 34 pounds instead of being on 38, 39 pounds. So there's a pretty big difference there in boost level, but that's because the engine is more efficient. Effectively, it is less boost, 20 to 30 kilowatts more power. That is, much nicer on things inside the engine. You're not pushing as much boost pressure through, all the cooler piping and everything else. And the engine's more efficient, so it's much happier. At the moment, the reason we've stopped there, I honestly believe we can probably make 400 kilowatts at the hubs in this car. I think that's actually quite achievable. The problem is that we've stopped at our torque limit because we know that if we push harder, we're likely to encounter that problem earlier. So until we see studs, gasket, those types of things in these cars, it's hard to say unless someone wants to maybe do a destructive test. The really surprising thing with this car is that when we got had our first conversation about it, the idea was maybe 300 kilowatts, a track car that was kind of the brief, to now have 380 plus kilowatts and be a 10-second car on the track. Like it's surpassed any of our expectations, that's for sure. And I mean, to be in a way easy to achieve this is very, very impressive. So for a platform to modify, this car has certainly proven to be something that's very special.
So I've picked up the car from PowerTune. It's all tuned. So now I can take it for a drive and see what the dog box is like. So we're on a public road, so I'm not out to show you guys what acceleration and what it's like at the track and all that sort of stuff. That's coming in a later video. Right now I just wanted to see what it's like to drive on public roads, driving around on the street. i.e., could you live with this dog box? My initial drive in peak hour traffic was that it's pretty good, but now it's time to show you guys. Let's go. I think the first isn't that bad, it's actually. As you can see, driving normally, not too bad. like most dog boxes, you know what you're doing. It's actually pretty good to drive. Now the advantage with the dog engagement is lots less shifting. Now the gear ratios being short, I reckon are pretty cool because watch. No lag, straight on, nice and responsive. It's even second gear on a roll on. It's pretty quick now. Don't pay too much attention to how fast it is right now. We're only on wastegate pressure, 15 pounds, 230 kilowatts. As you can see, the short ratio makes it pretty fun. Very, very lively. But we may run out of legs with drag racing, but that's the compromise you have to make. There you go, very first drive in a GR Yaris with a PPG 6-speed dog engagement straight cut gear set. What are my thoughts so far? Pretty good, actually. Now, if you've never driven a dog box, well, you may not know what to do or whether you like it. But if you've driven dog boxes before, like I have, my impression is you can drive the thing pretty smoothly and pretty nicely if you know what you're doing. If you've got no dog box experience, you might need a few lessons and get used to it. But could you drive this around on the street? I wouldn't daily it, but you can drive it around on the street, no problem. The noise from the straight cut gears, honestly, windows up in the car with a loud exhaust, I can't hear it. You can hear it with the windows down when it echoes off the buildings and stuff, so it's not too loud and intrusive. So if you just want a fun weekend modified car and you want a gear set, this will work perfectly fine. So far, I think the ratios being this short helps this turbo get up onto boost better and is better to drive, but we may run out of legs at the drag strip. If you had a stock turbo, I think you could still work with this pretty well, but I think overall there probably needs to be an option for two different gear ratios, one that's more tarmac rally, small circuit orientated, and probably one that's more for drag racing and longer tracks is probably where I think we'll need to go in the future. But the whole idea of PPG putting this gear set in our GR Yaris was to test that out and give them feedback. We've only been driving around on low boost, obviously, for this quick drive, just 230 kilowatts. When we do get the chance to go to the track and unleash the thing properly, we'll have it on full power at the drags, we'll have it on about 300 kilowatts for the circuit, and we can really test it out in a future video. But so far, if you want this gear set in your Yaris and you want to be able to drive your car on the street, you can do that if you know how to drive a dog box. And to be honest, if you've never driven a dog box, this wouldn't be a terrible one to learn in, because honestly, it's pretty smooth for dog engagement transmission, and you can drive the thing on the street pretty well, pretty nicely, in fact. You wouldn't give it to your grandma to drive, but if you had a friend in the car, they probably wouldn't even notice that it's a dog box. They probably just think you're a little bit assertive with the gear changes. But overall, gear set works great. No issues with shift, no issues with finding gears or anything like that. So pretty impressed so far, but the big test will be when we hit the track. Make sure you click the subscribe, the like button, all that sort of stuff, and we'll see you when we get back on track with our GR Yaris.